There is a story in the Old Testament that I must confess is the darkest and most haunting in the entire Bible. Its content is very violent and not suitable for children. So before you watch this video, I want to ensure that you understand it is not appropriate for all ages and may trigger some past trauma. This story is recorded in chapters 19 to 21 of the book of Judges, with many only familiar with chapter 19 without reading the rest of the story. This is unfortunate, as I believe the following parts contain valuable lessons that you and I can explore. In this video, I will recount this story in the most dramatic way so that together we can delve into the lessons that this mysterious story seeks to convey. Before starting today's content, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our latest updates. It only takes a second to like, but it means a lot to us. We begin to explore chapter 19 of the book of Judges, a particularly noteworthy chapter in the Bible. This passage begins as follows. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, there was a Levite living in a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, who took a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. This is the story of a Levite from the hill country of Ephraim in northern Israel, who took a woman from Bethlehem in the south as his concubine, or as some accounts suggest, his official wife. The story continues when the Levite's wife was unfaithful and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem, where she stayed for 4 months. In an effort to mend the relationship, the Levite set out with a servant and 2 donkeys from Ephraim to Bethlehem to bring his wife back. There his father-in-law was very hospitable, repeatedly urging the Levite to stay 1 more night. Although the Levite kept insisting that he needed to go home, he eventually accepted the offer and stayed for several more days. However, when he finally decided to leave, a series of tragedies soon followed. This story reflects not only geographical aspects but also the cultural and social differences between northern and southern Israel at that time. Scholars have noted that this event illustrates the moral decay and societal disorder, as there was no strong central institution to guide or resolve conflicts. The relationships between the characters and the subsequent events reveal profound lessons about loyalty, betrayal, and the consequences of a lack of effective leadership in a society. As the Levite and his concubine continued their journey from Bethlehem northward, they had to pass through unfamiliar lands of southern Israel and approach the city of Gibeah, now Jerusalem. As evening approached, the servant suggested stopping for the night in Gibeah, but the master refused, saying, "We will not stop in a foreign city where there are no Israelites. Let's continue to Gibeah." This journey evoked many dangers and uncertainties while traveling through an unfamiliar region, hinting at the insecurity of that era, a time when there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25. Eventually, they arrived near Gibeah, a city of the tribe of Benjamin, but surprisingly, no one there welcomed them. This was in stark contrast to the traditional hospitality of ancient Israel, where refusing to welcome strangers was considered a great dishonor. As night fell, an old man passing through the square was surprised and asked them, "Why are you still here? Hasn't anyone invited you into their house?" The Levite replied, "No, no one has welcomed us." The old man, with sincere hospitality, invited them to his house, ensuring they had a safe place to rest. Even though the Levite mentioned that they had brought all they needed, the old man still kindly welcomed them, showing humanity and respect, and emphasizing the community's responsibility to strangers at that time. The story in Gibeah reached its climax in a horrifying scene. While the Levite, his servant, and his concubine were resting at the old man's house, a group of wicked men from the city suddenly surrounded the house. They knocked on the door and demanded the host to bring out the Levite so they could know him, a euphemism in the Bible for sexual relations, a brutal and perverse demand that highlighted the moral depravity of Gibeah, where the tribe of Benjamin resided. This demand echoed the depravity seen in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis, where the townspeople also sought to abuse strangers, and both events pointed to a society that had completely lost its morals and compassion. The host tried to appease the crowd, pleading with them to abandon their intent. "Please, my brothers, do not do this wicked thing. This man has come under my roof. Do not commit this vile act." To protect his guest, he even offered his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to the crowd. This was a shocking act, but it might reflect the belief in the duty to protect guests under one's roof, even at great personal sacrifice. However, the crowd did not listen and continued to demand. Then the Levite acted by throwing his concubine out to the aggressive crowd and locking the door behind her. Verses 25 through 28. Compare Judges 26, in contrast to divine intervention in Genesis 19:11. They abused, raped, and tortured her throughout the night until morning. At dawn, they let her go exhausted and in pain. This event was shocking and horrifying, marking a major turning point in the Old Testament, highlighting the moral decline and the consequences of a society without leadership and order. The story in the book of Judges reached its peak of horror and tragedy. After a long night of torture and continuous rape by the wicked mob of Gibeah, the woman was so exhausted that at dawn, she could only drag herself to the threshold of the host's house, collapsing and lying there in pain and despair. This image evokes immense pain, both physical and mental torture, that left her unable to take another step. When the Levite came out the next morning, instead of showing compassion, he uttered coldly, "Get up, let's go." This callous statement further emphasized his inhuman response to the woman's extreme suffering throughout the night. There was no response from her, because she was dead. From here, the story took an even more haunting turn as the Levite placed the body of his concubine on a donkey, returned home, and committed a dreadful act. He took a knife, cut her body into 12 pieces, and sent each part to the 12 tribes of Israel. This act was not only a call for vengeance, but also an accusation directed at all of Israel for the moral decay they were facing. When the tribes received these body parts and the letter detailing the tragedy, they were shocked and horrified, saying, "Nothing like this has ever happened or been seen since the day the Israelites came up out of Egypt." The Levites' act sent shockwaves throughout Israel, becoming a symbol of the moral decline in the community and sparking a wave of response from the tribes, who felt this was an unprecedented stain on their nation's history. As the tribes faced this painful and brutal truth, they were left with a difficult choice: how to respond to maintain the honor of the nation and address the widespread crimes across Israel. This event was not only an indictment of the social condition at the time, but also a profound reminder of the community's responsibility to uphold justice and human dignity. The brutal story in the book of Judges continues to unfold the darkest chapters of morality and humanity in Israel's history. After the tragedy of the Levite's concubine, the events in chapters 20 and 21 led the entire nation of Israel into a fierce conflict, leaving profound lessons for us to reflect upon. The men of Israel gathered to hear the details of what had happened, and the Levite lied. Instead of describing the intention of the Gibeah men to rape him, he reported that they intended to kill him, mistreated his wife, and she died. He did not mention that he had thrown his wife outside to protect himself. Israel vowed not to return home until justice was served. They first confronted the tribe of Benjamin, demanding that they surrender the culprits, giving Benjamin an opportunity to show solidarity with Israel and avoid war. The highly skilled warrior tribe of Benjamin refused, effectively declaring secession. Civil war ensued. Israel defeated Benjamin, but the slaughter was horrifying. Instead of recalling the murder of an innocent woman and vowing not to repeat such acts, Israel killed most of Benjamin's inhabitants, along with their livestock and any innocent passers-by they encountered. The Israelite warriors then vowed not to let their daughters marry the surviving Benjamites, reminding readers that, like the concubine, women had no voice. They annihilated the existence of the tribe of Benjamin by killing their wives and children and withholding their own daughters. The story of the devastating battle between the Israelite tribes and the tribe of Benjamin is one of the classic examples in the Bible of how misguided decisions can lead to a chain of catastrophic consequences far beyond the original intentions. In this fierce war, only 600 Benjamin men survived, with no women to continue their lineage. The fear of the potential extinction of a tribe among the Israelites caused the other 11 tribes, despite their victory, to face profound guilt and regret. The issue of the survival of the tribe of Benjamin serves as a powerful reminder of the complex and uncontrollable nature of consequences. Each misguided decision can lead to many unforeseen ramifications. Initially, the actions of some Benjaminites were immoral, but the response of the other tribes was equally brutal. Their choice to resolve the conflict through violence escalated the situation and led to an outcome that no one wanted: heavy losses on both sides. From here, the story presents a bitter truth. We can control our actions, but we cannot control their consequences. Judges 21:6. Their choices had weakened both sides, and now they faced the heartbreaking consequence: a tribe on the verge of vanishing forever. To resolve the survival issue of the tribe of Benjamin, the Israelites decided to launch another attack on Gibeah, killing all the men and taking 400 unmarried women as wives for the surviving Benjamites. However, this action was only a temporary solution and did not fully resolve the problem. 200 Benjamin men were still without wives. The Israelites' choice of violence to fix a previous violent situation only perpetuated the cycle of tragedy and repetition. Faced with the potential extinction of the tribe of Benjamin, the Israelites sought to resolve the issue by exploiting a legal and ethical loophole. They had sworn not to give their daughters to the Benjamites, but decided to hold a festival where young girls would come out to dance. With this plan, the Benjamin men could capture the girls as wives, ensuring the survival of their tribe while not technically breaking the vow. This is a troubling example of moral compromise, where people try to bend the rules for personal aims, thus continuing the chain of consequences from poor decisions. The consequences of these decisions were profound. Innocent women were taken, stripped of their freedom and families. The people of Gibeah were mercilessly slaughtered to provide women for the surviving Benjamites. This chain of tragedies shows the far-reaching impact of violent and irresponsible decisions, affecting not only those directly involved, but also completely innocent people. The story concludes with the statement, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." Judges 21:25. This is not just a summary, but a warning about the consequences of unchecked freedom and the lack of unity in a common goal. When individuals determine right and wrong according to their own views, society gradually falls into chaos and loss. Yet in the storm of sin and suffering, we also see the mercy of God. He did not allow the tribe of Benjamin to disappear completely, but gave them a chance to rebuild and recover, showing his patience with humanity despite their severe mistakes. The first lesson from this story emphasizes the consequences of a lack of responsibility and leadership. Judges 19:1 depicts a time when there was no king in Israel, and with the absence of authoritative leadership, the people strayed far from the path of morality. In a context of chaos and disorder, the Israelites no longer adhered to moral and legal standards. Without anyone to guide them, unrestrained and unconscionable actions had the chance to flourish, leading society into confusion and sin. From this story, we recognize the importance of maintaining responsibility and leadership in modern society, where laxity can lead to tragedies far greater than we can imagine. The second lesson pertains to the sanctity of human dignity. In the story, we witness a horrific act when the host offered his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to satisfy the crowd instead of the male guest. This exposes a troubling disregard for the value of women, as they were treated as substitutes and devalued. This lesson calls for respecting the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of gender, and fighting against dehumanization that, unfortunately, still exists in today's society. The final lesson is a wake-up call about the estrangement from spirituality and divine guidance. The story of the decline in the later chapters of the book of Judges represents a nation gradually drifting away from God's guidance, leading to a spiral of violence and chaos. These events highlight that without a spiritual foundation, people can easily be drawn into cruel and immoral actions. If each person in modern society could see others as individuals worthy of respect and love, created in the image of God, we could build a culture of respect and peace. The takeaway message from this story is the awareness that every decision carries consequences that we cannot fully control. Instead of trying to bend moral rules, we are reminded to think deeply and act responsibly, knowing that the consequences of our decisions will not only impact individuals, but could alter the lives of entire communities. If you find these stories interesting and want to explore more about the characters and lessons from the Bible, don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss future videos. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts or the lessons you've drawn from this tumultuous journey. Thank you for watching. May God bless you and your family.